Hello everyone, my name is Emir. I am a second-year master's student at Koç University studying under the supervision of Associate Professor Tilda Göksen. Today I'm going to present you my study, which is a comparison of temporal gestures according to the language used and auto proficiency in L1 Turkish and auto English bilinguals. As the name suggests, this study is about temporal language and gestures in first and second language. So let's have a start. First, we use space to think about time, and this is evident in our speech and gestures, like when we say, let's put everything behind us and do this, as if the past is literally behind us. Moving on, the career of metaphor model is a model about how we make sense of metaphors as we see them, and according to this model, when we process a novel metaphor, we need to establish correspondences, or mappings, if you like, between the concrete and abstract parts of it, space and time, for example. However, conventional metaphors do not require such processing and can be understood instantly, like let's put everything behind us. Bilingual research on metaphors has shown that there are different mechanisms involved in L1 and L2 metaphor processing. For example, we process metaphors less automatically, that is, closer to novel metaphors, in L2. Moreover, it has been shown that metaphors elicit more right hemisphere activation compared to literal sentences, especially in L2. And in relation to that, people use more left-hand gestures while explaining metaphors compared to literal sentences. A general hypothesis about gestures as self-oriented functions, which is the gesture for conceptualization hypothesis by Kita and colleagues, claims that gestures help us perform mental operations with spatial information. Using space to make sense of time can be an example of this. This brief review of literature brings us to our research question, which is, as you can see, can we observe the processing differences arising from the conventional of the same metaphors in L1 and L2 in co-speak gestures? To answer this question, we asked 19 participants to explain the meanings of 12 literal and 12 metaphorical sentences in Turkish and English with a week interval in between sessions. The literal and metaphorical sentence pairs included same spatial words such as distant, as shown in Table 1. We measured the L2 proficiency of our participants using PPVT4 and LeapQ, and we asked our participants to rate the sentences after each session. We recorded our participants as they explained the sentences to us, and later coded their gestures for McNeil's and Kuprel and Nunez's gesture classification schemes along with their axis, hand use, and congruency. So what we found was, first, there was no difference in the number of gestures our participants produced in Turkish and English sessions overall, and our participants' L2 proficiency scores were not related to the number of gestures they produced in any condition. However, our participants produced more gestures while explaining metaphors in English compared to Turkish, and our participants did not use more left or both hand gestures in response to metaphors compared to literal sentences in either language. So what do the results obtained so far tell us? Mapping demands of English metaphors may have elicited more gestures compared to Turkish metaphors, and we think this mapping demands might have been a result of the decreased conventionality of these metaphors in L2. To further explore this possibility, we have an ongoing item-based analysis in which we will pit the ratings of participants to the sentences against the gestures they produced, number of gestures they produced as a response to each sentence. Finally, our results did not support the left-hand involvement argument and the bilateral activation hypothesis about metaphors in the literature. This is the thing behind the research. Feel free to email me for any of your questions, and goodbye.